Hello, in today's lesson we are going to be looking at observing chemical changes. This lesson starts us into our second learning intention, which is to analyze and interpret data from chemical labs to determine if a chemical reaction has occurred. You will find, for those of you that were at DAA in 6th grade, you'll find that this lesson today is building off of and reviewing a lot of the information that you learned in grade 6. We will be using that information and then building on it next week up until our third learning intention, where we'll be looking at the law of conservation of mass. The success criteria for today is to list examples of chemical and physical properties of a substance, describing the signs of chemical change, and applying your understanding of chemical and physical changes to provide real-life examples from your house. The last success criteria will be done in the output slides, which are actually in a separate document. This lesson here is just the notes that you need to do. Okay, so basically every slide you will need to copy into your notes. I've given you a format here for your notes where you can basically make it into a table format to compare chemical and physical properties, their definitions, along with examples. I would ask that you give 4 examples of each, chemical properties and physical properties. Don't forget to put the date, the title, the page number, and then to record this in your table of contents as well. After that, you're going to give signs of chemical and physical change. If you run out of space, you could continue this on the next page, or you could actually use the output page, the blank white page just to the left of your notes, and just put a box around it to indicate that it's part of your notes. Okay? So let's get started. Chemical properties are any properties, which means characteristic, of a substance that can be changed, it can be observed while a substance undergoes a chemical change. So these are things that happen when a chemical change is actually happening. We'll just, move my webcam there so that you can see a little bit more. These properties change the chemical nature of the substance. So it has an effect on the chemical formula. It has an effect on the arrangement of the atoms within a molecule. Examples of chemical properties are toxicity, flammability, the ability to rust, and the reactivity to acids, heat, and water. So you'll notice it's how it reacts to a lot of things. How it reacts to heat, how it reacts to acids, how it reacts to water, how it reacts to being burnt in terms of flames or flammability, and how toxic it is how it reacts with living organisms usually. So feel free to pause the video whenever you need to record these into your notes before continuing. The next one that we have is physical properties. So these are the ones that you've seen already a lot, especially with the properties of metals, the properties of nonmetals, and the properties of metalloids. These are the properties that describe the physical appearance and makeup or composition of a substance. So they do not change the chemical structure. They do not change the arrangement of the atoms. They don't change the atoms that are in it. It's very much, it's about describing, using your 5 senses and describing the physical makeup of the property or of the substance. A couple of examples include the color, the luster, melting point. So what temperature does it change from a solid to a liquid? Remember, we covered this in 6th grade. The boiling point, where it goes from a liquid into a gas. Its density, which is how much mass there is per volume. Conductivity, whether it can let electricity or heat pass through. Solubility, does it dissolve when you mix it with water? Hardness, malleability, are you able to bend and shape and form it? And ductility, can you change it into wires? For more descriptions of these, in the output slides, you'll see a YouTube video, and that video goes into a lot of detail on these different properties. Okay, so comparing chemical change and physical change. Most of you are pretty familiar with this. Chemical change occurs when two or more substances react to create a different and new substance or substances. Okay, and the thing is that the new substances have different properties than the original substances. So, for example, cooking is a sign of, or is a chemical change. Your food, especially meat or eggs, the protein gets chemically changed while you are cooking because of the heat to become completely different than it was before. It changes the structure and it changes the property, including the chewiness, the taste, sometimes the color, the texture, those sorts of things. So the physical properties will change along with the chemical properties. Physical changes, on the other hand, are just changing state, basically, or changing the size of a substance. If you rip a piece of paper, it's still paper on both sides. Okay, although you can't necessarily easily put it back together, the substance itself has not changed. And that is the key thing with physical changes. You do not have a new substance. Okay, the physical properties on both pieces are going to be the same. Even the physical properties, for the most part, when you're going from a solid to a liquid or a liquid to a gas, they're slightly different, but for the most part, they're pretty similar. And the biggest thing is that it's not changing the chemical makeup. So that chemical formula is still the same, regardless of which state of matter it's in. Signs of chemical change, so ways that you know that a chemical change has happened instead of a physical change. There's usually a change of color, although you do have to be careful because change of color can happen with physical changes as well. Okay. There's a change in odor, so usually a change in smell. Doesn't have to happen, but sometimes will. Formation of gas bubbles, okay, where when you mix two substances together, for example, vinegar and baking soda, when you mix them together, you get all of that carbon dioxide that forms and all of those bubbles. That is a sign of chemical change. The formation of a solid or a precipitate is the actual word in chemistry, which you see in number 2. And release or absorption of heat, which is exothermic or endothermic reactions. And you can actually click on the link. I believe in the output slides, we have that linked for you so that you can see. Oh, the link isn't working at the moment. You can actually see the differences between exothermic, which means that it releases heat or light. Heat, because this is exothermic, but exothermic releasing heat or endothermic pulling in heat. For example, if you have one of those chemical hot packs where you twist it and it releases heat and it makes it warm, that would be an example of an exothermic reaction. Whereas the reusable or the sports ice packs, the ones where, again, you break it to mix the two chemicals together and it cools down, that is an example of an endothermic reaction. So just to summarize, chemical and physical properties help us to identify different substances. They also help us to identify when a chemical change has occurred. During a chemical change, there is a new substance formed, and that new substance has new properties. Signs of chemical change include a change in odor, color, temperature, or a formation of a gas or precipitate, or the fact that there actually is a brand new substance formed. Okay? You should be able to summarize the lesson in your own words. Try explaining it to somebody at your house. Maybe it could be your brother, your sister, it could be a nanny, it could be your parents. Try explaining it to them and describing it to them. Yeah. And your next steps are to go to the output presentation, which you'll complete the activities on the output page, which is right beside the notes that you just took. If you have questions, you can contact your teacher through Google Hangouts or email or Google Classroom, and we'll try to get back to you right away. That's it. All right.